Okay, folks, let's give, I know there were a lot of folks there, and let's give people a minute to sort of sort out where they want to be and make sure they get in the right room. And then we can just dig in. I'm going to just leave it as this screen to start with, and then I'll share my screen as we go through, and we'll kind of, maybe we just start at the south end of the corridor, kind of go south to north and start talking, getting input, and hearing where everybody's up to. So give us just a minute. I still see there's 10 or 15 people that need to get to the right place. And then Maite, I see you here. I think you should be in sorry, I think you should be in the Kentucky to Florida room. So if you
Okay,
go to the
I'll be
bottom right and
right
click leave room, CV will help you get there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Maite. Okay, so let's get things started, and people will join us. That's great. So again, my name is Chris Vogelsang, and I was facilitating the meeting, and I'm the project manager on the consultant side. And we have Adam Jaden here, who's the Dottie build lead. That means he's going to be in charge of the construction, right, Adam?
That is correct.
Making sure that goes well. And then from my side, I also have Sherry Moore here, and she's just taking notes and making sure we capture all your input appropriately and make sure we get everything we heard. So why don't we don't have that big a group, so why don't we just kind of go around and maybe just introduce yourself and kind of where you live in this section, and we can go from there. And if you're in the wrong place, that's fine. You can just click leave room, and CV in the main room will help you get there. So why don't, on my screen, I see Melissa Grungart in my top right. So Melissa, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Melissa, and I live between Yale and Amherst on Irving with my grandfather and my son. We live on the west side of the street.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for attending. Monta Double D, DD.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dana Montano with Councilman Kevin Flynn's office.
Hi, thank you for joining us, Dana. Patty McQuaid.
Hi, I live between Yale and Amherst on Irving.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Patty. Vern.
Hey, how you doing? I live right across the street, actually, from the McQuaids on Irving Street. Okay,
great, good. I'm glad that sounds like the word got out in the neighborhood. That's great. Thank you for joining us, Vern. Sure. Jason Gardner. If you're on mute.
Sorry, I'm slow with it, but yeah, I'm Jason. I live on Irving near Vassar.
Okay, thanks for joining us, Aaron Bravo.
Hey there, I am just across from Gust Elementary.
Great, thank you. And Chantel. I see you, Chantel Farias, but I don't hear you. Okay, we'll come back. Maybe Chantel is having some difficulty. Feel free to interrupt me if you get your audio back or you want to introduce yourself. Okay, I think we can talk about, this is our time to spend and just ask questions or everything. My feeling was if we just pull up the kind of roll plot and start walking through it, that might help. But if people want to focus in on a specific spot right away, let me know. But I'm going to start pulling some things up and sharing my screen, okay? Grab that. Super, and I'll make it bigger so we can see it. And I'm going to go, I think I'll start at the south end by Gust Elementary. And then we'll kind of work our way north, okay? So don't get dizzy on me while I work my way through here. And feel free to speak up anytime. Like, this is really intended to be a discussion. So I'm just going to start here, just the block south of Gust Elementary and at Amherst, just to share what we're I'm going to get a little closer. There we go. So everybody can see. So I'll work my way from south to north. Stop me and ask questions anytime. So at Amherst, what we're proposing is to do some curb extension bulb outs. And these are, with the symbols you're seeing, I'll just kind of explain so as we go through. So the red lines indicate where parking would be prohibited. In most cases in this southern, like right here, that's related to sight distance at the intersection. Now I understand I am that we don't show a red line here along Irving, and I think we should, so I might update that, but I'll kind of get into that here, right? So at the intersection, what you see is the white lines are actual stripes. The black circles that are on here are those vertical posts, those flex posts that they've been talking about. And then the red line here indicates that, you know, the space back from the intersection where we want to remove parking so we can see. We've also shown some dimensions here, so you can kind of get a feel for what we're talking about as we go through. As we get into this block, and this will be kind of the same as we go north for a little while. So to north is to the right, to your right. So north is over here where my cursor is, and south is down here. On the east side of the street, this 60% design shows removing parking on the east side and installing a bike lane. And on the west side, it shows retaining parking. So there's a parking lane shown here, and then a bike lane, and then there are 2 travel lanes in the middle. So that's kind of how this space is laid out and what it's looking like. And then as we get a little further north, and I'm hoping we hear from the folk that live across from Gust Elementary here. Linvale, we're proposing the same kind of curb extensions, and those are really to keep speeds down, create sight distance, and make the turning movements a little slower. A lot of times we find that the turning traffic has that's where a lot of pedestrian and auto accidents happen. And so we like those speeds to be as slow as possible, while still allowing fire trucks and design vehicles like school buses and things to make the turns they need to make. So in front of Gust Elementary, we actually met with Kathleen Marshall in March, I think, and then we went out on site during March and watched some pickup and drop off. I think in the PM peak. I think I was there in the morning once too, just kind of feel for how it was going. And you know, we became pretty clear like we really needed to retain this loading space here and everything, and make that stay and kind of keep working. But to make everything fit, we still ended up with parking removal on the east side, right? And so
in there for a second.
Go ahead, Vern. Yeah.
If you don't mind. The one question I have is about the parking for the people who are picking up the students, because the parking goes all the way down to Amherst, and both sides of the street, people are every day dropping off their kids and picking them up there. So where are they going to park to pick up their kids?
Yeah, Vern, so that's a good question. So there's a couple things there that we noticed when we were out there. We saw that activity happening. We talked with the school and the principal and the folks out here too. We really, to be honest, we don't like people dropping off and picking up on the east side because the kids are running across the street in the middle. And when I was out there, I noticed that several times that kids are in a hurry, they get dropped off and they kind of run across here. So we want to discourage that activity. So losing the parking on this side sort of helps with that. But on the flip side, where would that happen? So we're keeping it on the west side, right? And I understand that you're saying, and when I was out there, there was quite a bit of activity, right? So on Irving, the west side would stay. And then, you know, we still have our Yale space too. And then I noticed there's the early childhood center kind of up this way on Linvale. And there's quite a bit of drop-off pickup on Linvale as well, especially like a block to the west. And that would be unaffected as well. So we're not doing anything to that.
So
but I think what Vern was speaking to is they don't just park by the school. They park on Irving, south of Linville, and down towards Amherst. And they line up on both sides of the street. So, I mean, where are these parents supposed to park? And when there's school events, it's the same thing. And I know with COVID, there hasn't been a lot of those, but anytime we get back to regular, get rid of COVID, these parents need a place to park. That school has limited parking alone for their staff. I mean, removing the amount of parking that you are removing is going to be more of a negative impact than a positive impact. Not to mention, we don't see a lot of cyclists on this part of the corridor.
That's for sure.
And what,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay,
if
go
I
ahead,
could
Patty.
echo Burns' comments, because we live right across the street from each other down close to Amherst, we see families parking in the morning and in the afternoon, and they'll have 5 people get out of their car. The parents and the kids get out and they walk them up to the school. I'm sure that they do have kids that run across the street, but what we see is families parking to walk so they can further walk their kids up to the school.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, understood. Yeah. So what you're saying is the main behavior you see is more of a, it's not a kiss and ride kind of thing. It's a
Right.
park and escort the kids up to the entrance.
Yes.
And
Okay.
going on,
Yeah.
like Melissa, she's right. You know, saying if you just have parking on the west side of the street, the parking is what going to curve around to Amherst, or it's going to go all the way up Irving and, you know, up to the park.
Yeah, up on this, the park on the south side, south of
Park on
Amherst.
the
Is that what
south
you're
side.
talking about?
And
Yeah.
there's
South
also
of Amherst.
the new housing development that's being built right now up across the street from the park. So even if people do go south of Amherst and continue to park up there, that's going to affect future residents in that project that's being built now.
Yeah, you talking about Loretto Heights, maybe?
Correct.
Yeah, gotcha. Yep, yeah, Loretto Heights is just, it's off our picture here, but it's just kind of down here, a big space that's being redeveloped. Okay,
Now,
yeah, go
I'd like
ahead,
to,
Vern.
yeah. So what Patty said, you know, I've lived here since 1985 for the most part, and we hardly have had any cyclists. We hardly ever see any cyclists going down the street. So I don't know who came up with the idea of putting a biking lane on Irving Street.
So yeah, so that was how did that come about? I mean, there's a whole process that happened since 2010, I think, with different planning studies and things. And Irving was identified in those, and in the 2015 updated Denver Moves plan, it was kind of reaffirmed that it was a corridor of interest for us. So it's been a long community-based planning process, and I understand that kind of when we get to this stage, when we start showing like, well, what does that mean? That gets a lot more real, and we get a lot, to be honest, we get a lot better feedback at this stage too. Earlier, maybe people aren't paying as much attention. So it's good that we're having this discussion. I will say, Vern, I know that I'm an outlier, but I have ridden it 3 times in the last 2 months, which isn't that much. But I think what I found was Yale to the west was actually, there are quite a few cyclists coming up this way. And you know, what we're planning for here, I think, is change, right? So we want there to be more. And I understand you're saying you guys don't see any today. I think we're hoping we see more, and we want people to have choices. And I think that's part of the programmatic piece of this. And the other thing is, you know, we're doing a lot of corridors at one time, and that's on purpose too, to create a system instead of just doing one corridor every 2 or 3 years. Like, we're trying to do a system of things and implement them so that people can move around. So that's just some background there. I'm not trying to convince you it's the right thing, but that's where we're coming from.
Just to put my voice in, I ride it several times a week. I rode it yesterday. I will ride it tomorrow. I do not feel comfortable sending my kids from my house down at Vassar down to the park at Loretto on their bikes as it is.
I'm sorry, say that again, Aaron. You said you feel safe as it is, or you don't?
No, not safe right now, not for my kids.
Yeah, that was Jason Gardner, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, am I quiet?
Oh, sorry about that.
No, I heard you fine, but I think
Okay.
So I think Jason was saying he bikes it regularly, and he lives in the area, and doesn't feel safe sending his less experienced riders, I guess, is kind of what you're getting at, right?
Right.
Jason?
Yeah.
And I understand that. I understand that completely. I do. I ride whenever I get an opportunity to. So I've ridden again. I've been here since 1985. So
Sure.
there aren't very many people riding bikes around here.
Yeah, and that's fair. And I've been here since 2008, so obviously not as long, but a minute. And my kids are of the age where they should be old enough to ride around safely, and I don't feel that they can.
Well, and I don't think the issue is the bike lane, it's the type of bike lane that we're putting in. So my family, we've lived here since the 70s, since before Irving was a through street across Amherst. My son and his neighborhood friends have ridden their bikes around here. They're a little bit older, and they've been pretty good at watching for cars and stuff. Particularly on this end, we don't like we said, we don't see a lot of cyclist traffic that would need a closed bikeway, if that makes sense.
Correct.
I think the bike lanes that they have on West Dartmouth and along Lowell are good, because it's not, the bikes are still having a bike lane and people are still able to access parking. So it's sharing the road, which is what we're trying to accomplish without infringing upon anybody.
Yeah, let me address that just real quickly. So I hear what you're saying, but they're a little different. So those streets you mentioned, they have bike lanes and parking, right? They're not sharing. There's not a bike parking lane. And it's similar to what we're saying here. Like, we aren't saying these aren't protected bike lanes, they aren't buffered bike lanes, but we only have 40 feet to work with, and those streets are a little wider. And so, with 40 feet, we can't get, we need 46 feet basically to get parking on both sides and just regular straight bike lanes in. And we don't have the width. So that's why you're seeing this is different than those streets. It's really just because of what the streets look like, how wide they are. And so, it's hard to share space you don't have, I guess, is
The
where I'm coming from.
overall route, what are you trying to accomplish for the overall route? I mean, are you just trying to go to Evans and that's it, or
right. So let's so the route, I mean, what we're doing is trying to connect, the whole, it's a long corridor. I think it's 2.1 miles, which is one of our longer corridors in our program. And there's a lot of schools along. We have Sanderson Gulch, we have Yale, we have bike lanes on Kentucky, I believe, right? And maybe Adam, can you talk a little bit more to like the overall programmatic goals and what this
I
does?
can. So
Yeah.
So we're building out this network, as was mentioned earlier. We're connecting the bike lanes at Florida, connecting to the bike lanes at Kentucky and Jewel. As we mentioned, the Sanderson Gulch Trail, as well as connecting to these schools. So, we're trying to build out this network where you can take a bike lane to school, or you can take it to the trail. And as you move along Irving, you're connecting to either proposed or upcoming or already implemented bike lanes on the corridor. So it's a process, and it's moving along, and as time goes on, you'll see this network build out where you can get where you need to go using a bicycle and having that bike facility the entire way.
Are you trying to get everybody downtown? I don't know. I've ridden a lot, and I've ridden all the way over to like Yale and Colorado Boulevard with no issues, and without going on, with bike routes or bike lanes. So I just don't quite understand the whole thing. What if you're trying to connect just a nice bike route throughout the entire city or the southwest part of the city? I'm not
so. No, that's good context, and it sounds like you're a fairly confident rider. We're trying to capture some of these less confident riders, where if you want to have your child ride to school, they can do that, or you can connect to a park. It's not always about getting longer distances, right? And that is an option, but I think connecting local things that interest you where the community is also a major part of that as well, whether it's a park in the neighborhood, schools in the neighborhood, things like that.
You know, a couple things I see. I think, yeah, there's a terrible problem with speeders going down the street on Amherst and Irving. We've got, especially when it snows, we have a bunch of idiots driving too fast, coming down by the park and running into our neighbor's yard and to a big old rock or a couple of big rocks she's got out there. So I see that as a problem. You know, have you thought about maybe the through street that's going into Loretta Heights, making that a bike lane onto that, you know, going through the nice neighborhood that's being built?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if I can answer that directly. I know when I don't know if Loretto Heights is kind of its own plan for what they're doing inside with their circulation and their roads and everything, and that's being, you know, led through a review process that's aware of these projects and these improvements, right? As far as us, you know, we looked through the planning process at Irving and alternate streets and kind of landed back on, you know, Irving was the best place for those goals that we were trying to achieve, right? And that was, you know, connecting land uses, connecting destinations, making it safe and comfortable for people. Like, I'm with you, Vern. So I read Irving, Yale, no problem, right? But you know, my wife wouldn't ride it, and you know, she's not as confident a cyclist as I am, and these facilities will be a big change for people like her that can feel comfortable to get out. So, and unfortunately, you know, we have X amount of feet to work with, and we can't make it all fit. And so I think that's why I think we'd love to have it all, right? And I think that's why we're having a hard time getting our head around this.
Well, I am thrilled that you have made changes since a meeting I was on over the summertime, because at that point it was still, there was going to be absolutely no parking between like Kentucky and Amherst. So I'm very happy that you've listened in that regard. But a lot of the things that came up was regarding safety and reducing the speed of the vehicles. And if you go back to the intersection at Irving and Amherst, where you're narrowing the the intersection there, do you have any statistics on how well that works? Because at that intersection, for the people going east-west on Amherst, the stop sign is completely optional, evidently, and and there aren't any police patrols anywhere on any street anymore. It's like COVID did away with the police as far as speeding is concerned. So, you know, does narrowing an intersection really stop people from running the stop signs?
So I'll say a couple things, and then maybe I'll let Adam join in too. But so we wouldn't expect, what we'd expect here is not a speed change, right? Because it's an always stop today, and like it'll maintain always stop. But we would expect to get better compliance with the stop signs, because you know, we're narrowing the throat up. We're making a lot more visible that, like, you know, this is a place you're supposed to stop. I'm not saying people won't blow through it. And if people are doing that, it's because they don't think anybody's going to be coming the other way, and they don't think they're going to get a ticket, right? And so you're right. Like, I think this, everything kind of goes together, and I know the police are stretched, but there's design elements. So what we call infrastructure, right? Things we can do on that let people know, like, I guess, give people clues and cues about how fast they should drive and how they should behave, right? And so we try to design the environment so that it feels like, oh, I should drive slower because it's narrower. Then there's enforcement, right? Which is a kind of a hard to do continuously, but you know, it's important to have that happen every so often so people pay attention. And then there's education, right? And getting the community. And what we find is most of the time when people are running those stop signs, it's not people driving in from Aurora. It's people that live in the neighborhood that know the area, and they're like, I don't need to stop here because nobody's ever coming. So there's kind of that piece too. And so I think those three got to go together. Adam, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think you covered it pretty well, Chris. The one thing that maybe I can offer is I'll drop it in the chat, but there's also the neighborhood enforcement team with DPD. It's a number you can call, and they respond directly to citizens' requests for enforcement of stop signs, enforcement of speed trailers, because you know, while we can design these things and for the best to bring visibility up at the intersection, at the end of the day, it then becomes a Denver Police Department, their job to enforce it. So we can reach out to them and contact them, and hopefully they can come out and do some enforcement and really drive home that this intersection is important for pedestrians and bikes at the intersection.
Irving's also the snow route. I know we haven't had a lot of snow yet this year, but the plows come down Irving. How will these new things that you're putting in the intersection affect the plows?
Yeah, Adam probably knows best. I know we've been working very closely between, so there's kind of imagine three phases. There's plan, design, and build, right? And so plan is, we're kind of done with plan. Like we went through the whole process. We're in design now, where we're going to design these things, and we're trying to take into account all the maintenance, emergency vehicle access, snow plowing, all that stuff. And then that turns into build. So Adam, can you give us just a quick spiel on how the maintenance and those things, how those groups are interfacing with the design standards?
Yeah, so when we have those vertical elements that block the snow plows from getting in the bike lane, we have specific equipment that plows those bike lanes. But as you get to the standard, you know, there's nothing blocking to the curb. That's going to be just our typical snow plows coming through there. So we're working on ramping up to get more equipment to plow between those vertical elements at the intersection and the curb, but for the most part, it's going to be just standard plow operations.
Yeah, and there could be, you know, we've planned for and budgeted for, there clearly are going to be times when those posts get knocked down or need to be replaced, and that'll be a regular maintenance activity that the Dottie crews do.
If you don't mind me jumping in here, one thing about, I would say I am worried about those posts kind of detracting from the neighborhood and kind of maybe bringing down the value of our property. I don't find them attractive whatsoever. And any place I go when I see them in town, I don't find them attractive. So that's probably one drawback I have. I like that you've at least allowed parking on one side of the street. But
gotcha.
Those.
If I could just hop in a little bit here. I'm Erin. I live across from Gus. So I like the idea of putting the red line across that whole east side. I think that's helpful visually.
So it's really clear, right? What's going on?
I mean, I just think in general, this is my first meeting. We had a hard first quarter, so I didn't know about any of this. So this is really helpful. Thank you for putting this on. So we're right across from Gus. I am a mom of almost 2, and we bike as much as we can with our little ones. This is exciting for me. Of course, the no parking or the removal of the parking on that east side is a little tough to swallow. I completely understand dimensionally why. But I did hear earlier that you guys were, I think, was it Johnson Elementary maybe, where you would look at potentially changing the regulations about not parking on that side during evenings and weekends. Is that something that could be potentially a part of the conversation? Because right now that's a handicap and school loading only. And it's going to be like, I don't want to force our guests, like as much as I love the idea of bringing bikes in here, having a different option. And we bike to the grocery store. It's a workout, but we get up and down those hills. And you can see that east side is pretty well parked. You know, we have single car driveways. I don't really want to pave more of my permeable area. And so it's just, I don't want to put my guess on Yale. And here, yeah, right where you're looking, so that we've got the handicap parking, and then really it's all yellow curbed, which no one feels comfortable parking on that side, like
Gotcha.
during non-school hours. So I'm wondering if maybe that conversation could be had. And then just to like jump back into the kind of the beginning of the conversation about the school. I mean, school pickup and drop off is an age-old issue. I don't think we're going to solve anything here, but just the realities that were, showing up in March of last year probably are a little less realistic than what they are. I mean, I live the third house in, and my driveway is constantly parked. I knew what we were getting into, when we bought across from the school. We actually love being across from the school. But it is it's a double park kind of situation on both sides. So that it will, I guess we can't really turn social behavior, blind eye to the fact that people are going to likely be in these bike lanes for a short period of time during the morning. And it's just ironic that, and again, fan of this, but it's just ironic that like, really the only thing this is connecting are kind of our homes and schools, right? Like, so we don't have to be so car dependent to drop our kids off. But it's just funny that like those are going to conflict at those times. And I mean, we bike quite a bit, and our biggest connection point is getting down to the path, like the Bear Creek Trail, then going down by the river and following that south. So it'd be cool to see a connection all the way down past Amherst, but we'll see what Loretto Heights pulls up. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to see if there was any way for those of us who are, kind of on this block right adjacent to or across the street from Gus to maybe have that option to park across the street if we need to. Like I said, like my husband, and we come and go at different times, and we'll throw our car on the street so we don't have to get up and move everyone at one time.
Right.
I know that's selfish. I know it's very specific, but I think having an option for guests to not have to go park on Yale, Linville, neighbors get funky about you parking in front of their house, even though it's a public street.
Public street.
Now, can I jump in here real quick?
Sure, Vern.
And I don't know the gal who was just talking, but
Aaron Bravo.
Okay, Aaron. Okay, so
yeah. Yep.
Brought us some great points. Okay, these homes were built back in the 50s, and so we didn't have as many cars and things like cars and motorcycles, and probably most everybody had a one-car home. Well, most everybody now has 2 to 3, even 4 cars in their home. So I think that the street parking is very important. Now, you might want to consider for some people, I wouldn't mind, hey, if you want to expand my driveway to a 2-car driveway, I will look into that. That might not be too bad. But she brings up some very good points about the street parking.
Yeah, so let me circle back to Aaron's questions and comments there. So yeah, this north side, the west side in front of Gust, where the loading is from like 8 till 5, right? Is kind of how it's set up. I think we're totally open to trying to do some similar signing. And I think what you're seeing there is that it's signed that way that you should be able to use it today, but that yellow curb really makes you feel uncomfortable. And so I think we should look at that. I think we should take those notes down. We can make some changes to how this looks and how it's signed and how it's kind of painted. And I think we're totally open to that space being used for multiple purposes throughout the day, depending on needs. So I think that's a good suggestion, Aaron, and we'll take that into consideration as we kind of work through on design. And then I think the other things you were talking about, so in terms of the kind of, illegal parking that's going to happen here during school pickup drop-off times. So when we had it before, like the vertical elements really make that hard to do, right? But to do the vertical elements, we had to take all the parking on the street, and we really didn't want to do that either. And so I think we just kind of end up with this compromise. And you're right, like it's going to be hard to enforce people not pulling into this bike lane and dropping dropping people off or, parking for 5 minutes. We're going to try to change behavior there. But I think that's one thing we're worried about as well is how does that work at the times when we'd like parents and kids to be able to feel comfortable walking a bike to school. We want the facilities to be available, right, and not full of cars. So I think that'll be something we'll have to monitor as it goes forward. I think those are the main points, Aaron, that you made.
Yeah, thank you for letting me babble. Sorry, went on a little longer than I was expecting to.
No, that's great. We appreciate it. And then, Fern, to your point, in terms of like off right-of-way improvements, like so on private property, I know those aren't on the table. So like the city's not going to come and widen everybody's driveway to 2 cars wide. I just know that's not going to happen. So I don't want you to go on that road.
I didn't expect it. So I'm just throwing it out there. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I get it. It's a double-edged sword, right? We see driveways and garages, street parking. We understand that the dynamics and demographics are different than they were when these homes were built, right? And with the other thing we're struggling with, just full disclosure, is the new city, I guess it's an ordinance about how many non-related adults can live in one house, right? So that changed, I think, last spring. And I think what we're seeing on some corridors is there's more cars because there's like 4 adults living in a home and they each have their own vehicle. And so I think we're struggling with that too. And we're trying to balance that. That's kind of an unknown as well at this time. So, but this is where we are today, and kind of keep looking. We've been talking a lot down on this end, and it sounds like most people are here, but I don't want to leave anybody out that has things they want to say. We have about 15 minutes of time left together.
I just wanted to make a comment.
Sure.
Dana with Councilman Flynn's office. First of all, yes, we will have bike lanes through Loretto. It was when it went through the neighborhood plan, it was something that was a lot of the community was really passionate about. And part of that conversation, many neighborhoods were involved, but College View was involved. So the bike lanes through Loretta Heights will connect to the College View neighborhood on the other side of Federal, which is really exciting. So yes, there will be bike lanes. Also, with the school, with the drop-offs, we have been experiencing the last several years. I've been the city council aide for this district for 18 years. It is mandatory now that parents sign preschoolers and kindergartens in. So siblings that are older can't walk their little brother or sister to class anymore. They have to be signed in by an adult in and out of class. So that's been, I think that's where we're seeing a lot of the parents that are parking and walking their kids in, is because that mandatory requirement for sign in. And I feel like, even though you mentioned that people are parking along Irving and they're walking, maybe jaywalking, walking across the street, I would think the last thing we would want them to do is park on Yale and do the same thing, which is a much busier street than Irving. Also, in doing this with this process, we've heard back from our community, and a lot of residents have said that they walk more than they bike. And the narrow sidewalks in this area that are only 2 foot wide, they'd like to see wider sidewalks for more safety, to have a choice. You talk about choice, and they want a choice to walk. And you can't even walk your dog alongside of you because these sidewalks in our community are so narrow, and they're just so they'd rather see wider sidewalks than bike lanes. Another issue is somebody mentioned police. Was it you, Aaron? Maybe
it wasn't me.
It was
Patty. So the number one complaint we receive in our district is speeding and running through stop signs. So our office purchased 5 speed signs, driver feedback signs for District 4 Police, and we have a great net team. It's Neighborhood Enforcement Traffic Unit that we can have go out, but it's not just our district, it's citywide. The 2 biggest complaints wide in Denver are are speeding and running through stop signs. But I've already emailed our neighborhood and enforcement traffic team and asked them to put this on their radar, and asked Officer Nuanas to go out for those people that are running through that stop sign. And finally, just the last comment is just people, especially around the schools, are just really everything that our residents are saying. That's what we're hearing from not just people around Gust, but also Johnson down the street. They're just really worried about the illegal parking, and we don't want to ticket working families, right? A mom that's running late for work, that might be a single mom running late, trying to drop off her kids, looking for parking, like scrambling. And the last thing we want to do is start to give tickets and stuff. So I'd be really interested in how we're going to educate parents, because especially in the winter, it can be a long walk for a mom to walk, a preschooler all the way to another end of to sign in their kids. Especially, I just want us to be sensitive to, maybe we don't know about this requirement. I think it just started like 3 or 4 years ago that you have to sign the kids.
Yeah.
in.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you. Did you?
Oh, you're fine. That's
okay.
it. No.
Sorry. Just a couple things. So I really appreciate you taking the time to tell us about Loretto and kind of give us that feedback that you've heard. A couple things. We were aware of that check-in requirements. So the principal talked to us about that. The Early Childhood Center at Gust is right here. This is where their entrance is, off Linvale and Julian. And I went out and kind of watched in the morning and the afternoon, and those parents are parking, a lot of them on Julian and Linvale. Linvale ends up being some staff parking because their parking lot's kind of small, but they also have parents here. So we're seeing that activity for the Early Learning Center happening in here, is what I saw anyway. And so that we are trying not to affect. And then in terms of the drop off, I totally agree. Like, you don't want people dropping off on the north side of Yale and having them run across the street. We don't want that anywhere, whether we're doing bike lanes or not, or anything. What we want curbside, like Knox, Yale, Irving, right? Curbside drop off and pickup. So we don't want the kids running across. And so I think we're on the same page there. It's just a matter of, what we've seen is the way the travel patterns work sometimes with parents coming to the school, is that it's more convenient one side or the other. Or just that's how their trip kind of gets made. And we're really trying to educate. I know the schools have worked really hard on that too with parents, but whatever we can do to help with that, I think we're on the same team there. So, okay. I'm gonna show the design back again. So thank you for that, and we'll capture that input, and I'm sure that Councilman Flynn will provide that to us again too.
Can I just jump in one more time? I'm sorry.
Yes.
That
No, Vern,
she made a
speak
great
up.
point with widening the sidewalks. We do have a ton of people walking in this neighborhood. A lot more people walk in this neighborhood than bike, that is for sure. So I think that's a great point. I wouldn't mind widening our sidewalk to make it more accessible to walkers.
Yeah, that's a great, that's
point.
super great. Totally agree. There's all these, so they call this, it's like a California rollover curb kind of thing. Anyway, the sidewalks are like 30 inches wide. That was kind of the design standard at the time. I'll just give you just something to think about as we think this through. So the city's interested in improving sidewalks throughout the city. They're very expensive, right? Because it's concrete. And if we widen, say like in here, where Aaron's house is, I think this is probably where you are. If we widen the side, if we widen out into the street, usually that has drainage implications and it gets really expensive. If we widen to the home side, then that has sort of easement implications and right of way. So it's a little more complicated than just, let's go widen them all. But we agree, like a 30-inch sidewalk is not adequate for what we're trying to shoot for. Go ahead. I think I saw Melissa. Did you have something to say?
No, I didn't have anything to say, but the widening of the sidewalks would be good. I know there's parts around this city that have the wider sidewalks, and then there's parts like ours that do not. But I don't know if it's possible to even make the sidewalks, like, for instance, when you go to the park, the bike path is a shared path between cyclists and pedestrians. Would it ever be possible to make the sidewalks kind of the same way as they are bike paths in the park, where you've got a walking path and a cycling path, so that the bikes are even safer on the sidewalk than they would be in the street in a bikeway. Even the protected bike lanes can get run over. We see the posts all over town mangled because some car hit them. It seems like the cyclists would be safer on a wider sidewalk that they would share with pedestrians than having to share the street with cars.
Gotcha. Yeah, thanks for that input. Yeah, so we have different levels of facilities, and at the highest level, it's separated, which is protected bike lanes, which is what you were talking about. Those have different configurations when they get implemented. Sometimes they're raised with like a curb, right? And they're actually behind a physical curb. They're more expensive to implement. Sometimes they're behind a flex post or a little, we do flex posts. I want to show you that too. Let me go up here a little bit. So as you look at these designs, I want you to understand what some of the symbology means. Where's my protected? Here we go. Okay, so this isn't in the section we were just talking about, but I just want you to see. So when we show a protected bike lane, like you were just discussing, where we're just doing paint and post stuff. So what you'll see here is the black circles are the posts, but these black horizontal lines are curbs, or like rubberized curb things that are like 6 inches high. It's a new thing we're starting to put in with this phase, as we've learned, like you said, that the posts aren't necessarily, people sometimes will just like to run them over. I don't know why, but they'll just drive and like thump, thump, thump them. And so the intent is to make this a little more robust. And so that isn't in the area we were just talking about, but I want you to know when you look at the designs, what those little symbols mean. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. We have about 5 minutes, and I'm just going to kind of hop around. Maybe I just I don't want to cut anybody off. This has been great discussion. I really appreciate y'all. You've really taken the time and to engage with us and thought this through, and it's been a good discussion and nice and civil. So that means a lot to us. So thank you for that. Is there anybody that didn't get a chance to speak that wants to, or other issues that we haven't brought up?
My son just asked, what about the trash cans? So for people who have the bike lane on their side of the street where there's no parking, are they still able to set their trash out like they normally would now with the bike lane in front of their house?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Adam probably has a better answer to that. And I honestly don't know. I'm assuming that this is curbside collection along Irving. Is that correct? And not
Yes,
alley, right? Okay.
Right, it's curbside.
Right. So, yeah, where bike lane is. Adam, do you have any info for us? I'll put you on the spot.
At this time, they're still able to use the curbside service. It's unfortunate for the bike lane, but as we mentioned earlier, we're using the space that we have, and if it's that one day where for a couple hours the bike lane's affected, that's what we have to live with. But yes, they're still able to have normal trash collection or bin collection.
So that would be in the side where there's just the bike lane, not the parking in the bike lane, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. That was a great question, Melissa. Thanks for asking. Anyone else with any other, I'm just kind of slowly scrolling through here, but we can just keep talking.
Yeah, if you don't mind jumping in one more time.
Yes, Fern.
Is this the only street that's 40 feet wide, or are there others? Like I know on Lowell, you already have bike lanes going up by the park and coming down. I think Lowell is still wider over from Evans, or excuse me, from Yale up to Amherst than what Irving is.
Yeah, so I believe you're correct. So Lowell is a wider street overall. And as you notice, right, as streets get built, they get built in pieces, right? So whenever some development happened. And so you'll see as we go through, let's just talk Irving, like we have different widths in different parts of this corridor. I think we're 40 feet on the south end. In some places we're down to, I think the Parkway section was like 22 feet on each side, but sometimes it's 26. And then we were down to 36 some places. So it varies, and we we go out in the field, measure it all, and try to take that into consideration. The Lowell piece, right? So it's wider, so it can accommodate that. That's why it has the bike lanes and the parking. And I know one of the things is Lowell's got pretty high speeds and volumes too. And I think if we were doing that facility now, we'd be looking at a protected bike lane there, and we probably have parking issues there as well. I don't think we could fit everything we need based on our engineering criteria on Lowell today either.
And again, I'm just going to jump back to like my first question. Who made this plan? And is there a real reason why you need to have the plan? Just because, again, like we've said, we hardly have any bikers. We got a lot of walkers, but hardly have any bikers. So did the people who put this plan together, did they come and talk with us that live in the neighborhood before making this proposal? Or did they just say, let's go ahead and just jump out and go ahead and do this? And
yeah, so I wasn't a consultant on that plan, but I know we could get all those details. But it was a very extensive public engagement process and it was 2 cycles, right? So I believe it was a 2010 and a 2015. It might be 2012, Adam.
It was 2011 and 2019. Are you referring to Denver moves?
Yeah.
And then
sorry. Yes.
yeah,
and those.
personally, I didn't see anything.
Right. So we hear that. We apologize for that. We do hear from folks that say, hey, I never knew about that. We try to reach everybody when we do those. And we try to, like on this project too, we're trying to reach everybody. And I'm sure there are people who live on the corridor that have not heard about it either. But it was a community, what they call community driven process with a long community input piece. And I apologize that you weren't aware. It sounds like you've lived there forever, and you should be aware of those things. So we do our best. Make sure that I know the Councilman Flynn's office tries to keep people informed.
Yeah, when we worked on the city, it was called something different back then, but when Dottie worked on the transportation in Denver moves, Councilman Flynn was part of that committee as well. What we weren't told was about the protected bike lanes and taking away parking. We believe that our community would react just the way that you guys are. Of course, people wanted and they encouraged and they supported bike lanes in our area. They wanted to see more of them, but it's just this type that they weren't aware of. If they would have been told, I think the conversation would have went different. If it would have been put out there, are you willing to lose the parking in front of your house, to get a bike lane? I think we would be having a different conversation.
Yeah, that is fair. Thank you for bringing that up. So just a real quick point. So in that plan, Vern, what was identified at the time were neighborhood bikeways on these corridors, right? And so those don't have very many parking removals. Then as we got into, the design piece, I'm trying to get further back here. We found that the speeds and volumes are just way higher than they assumed when they did those things. And the neighborhood bikeway facility just doesn't work with the type of activity we're seeing. So that's fair. Thanks for bringing that up. And I think that's been one of the main things that Councilman Flynn's office has been talking about is, this is changed quite a bit, and we don't know if we're comfortable with this, and let's figure out what we can do to make it better. So appreciate everybody's input and flexibility, and we're working through it. I did want to say, I think we're almost out of time. We have 1 minute. I'm going to just show this slide so everybody can see. And then if anybody has final thoughts. So, we have a comment period on these designs open to January 2nd. We took all your comments today. We capture those and they'll go into the design team. There's also that Conveo site that we showed you. You can go and get that design and click on real specific points and give us your specific input. It's bit.ly/WDSS comment. And this will be, all this recording, everything will be up on our project website along with links. That's shown here, the West Denver Safer Streets bit.ly address. Final design, we're hoping to finish early next year. We want to take all your input into consideration, and then we're constructing in 22 to 2023. So looks like we have like 1 minute. Does anybody have any closing thoughts or remarks?
Yeah, one more quick question is that, so I got this little flyer here. And so I tried to go to the website and I couldn't go to the website. So and I tried to call the phone number and nobody returned my phone call. So is it the best thing to
Gotcha.
do is reach you at via email?
So try that. The phone call thing, they should get back to you. I know we get a lot of calls, and so they will return everybody's call. Councilman Flynn's office will pass your things to us. I know the email's great, and the Conveo site, I think it was not. We didn't have the concepts live yet, so maybe that was the issue we're having. They're live as of today, so try again and see if you can get to them. If you have a problem, just email us and we'll get you connected. Okay.
Okay, and it's
Okay. And then do you co-host just stay? Is that who's left?
No, we have some other.
Okay.
other folks in.
Well, thanks. Thanks for running the meeting, CV. And I think just close the meeting out and appreciate your time.
Yep. Have a good night,
Thanks.
everyone.
Yeah, bye.